Lately, I've been getting a lot of questions from people about cellar management software. Specifically, what are the pros and cons, and also which cellar management software that I use personally to manage my own collection. And so today, I'm going to be drilling down into detail regarding each of those items. First, regardless of which particular software that you use, I found that cellar management software is useful for at least 3 reasons. First, it helps you keep track of your wine inventory. After you've been collecting for a while, it becomes essential for you to have some sort of tool in order to manage your inventory. Otherwise, it quickly becomes unwieldy to determine which particular producers that you have, which vintages you have, the number of bottles remaining, and so forth. Cellar management software is also very useful to help you keep track of your costs or the amount of money that you've spent on wine. This can be useful if you have a budget that you're trying to stick to, for example, or if you need to keep track of the amount that you spend on wine for tax purposes. Either way, you can quickly run reports that will show you how much you've spent for a particular time period, such as a quarter or for a particular year. For those of you with wine insurance, it's definitely very useful because it can help the insurance carrier confirm your inventory when you go to purchase the policy, and it can also be very, very useful when you go to make a claim if that should happen. Now, while all those benefits largely apply to most cellar management software on the market, I've been using Cellar Tracker for probably 10 years or so now. There's a number of reasons why I use Cellar Tracker. First, it has an extensive library of wines, and so it's very, very easy to input the wines because most of them are already populated in the system. It also has a very helpful scanning feature where you can take a picture of the UPC symbol and then the wine will come up without you having to input it. That helps to expedite the input, which can be especially time-consuming. It also has a significant amount of integrated wine reviews and tasting notes that can be very useful. And while I don't rely on these for purchasing decisions typically, I do find it useful for at least 2 or 3 reasons. First, when I go to open a wine, I'll have a particular idea about how long I'd want to decant that wine, or whether it should be decanted at all. However, I'll oftentimes look the wine up, especially if I'm unsure or haven't had the wine recently, just to see what other users have experienced with respect to that wine. On multiple occasions, I've had situations where multiple people have written consistent tasting notes that a particular wine was not ready to drink yet, or that it needs at least a 2 or 3 hour decant. In that instance, I'll plan accordingly and make sure that I open the wine well in advance, or possibly even pick something else if I don't have time to wait that long. Occasionally, when I'm going to purchase wine, I will also look the wine up and see what the tasting notes and experiences are like recently, especially with an older vintage. This helps you determine if the wine may be past peak. For example, with a lot of off-vintage Bordeaux, well, you'll sometimes get good deals on those or the opportunity to purchase those at prices that initially seem to be fairly competitive. However, if you look the wine up and many people are saying that the wine is definitely past peak, then you may want to pass on that wine. Another feature that I find very useful is the recommended drinking windows in Cellar Tracker. After you input your wine in Cellar Tracker, the wine will have a recommended drinking window, and it will allow you to run a report that states time to drink up, and then it will list those wines in the order in which they should be consumed. I don't typically always agree with this drinking window. It does allow you to modify it, so I'll sometimes do that to give it more time, because I tend to prefer my wines with more age on them. But nevertheless, I do feel that it's a useful default and starting point for a lot of wines. It also allows you to run reports according to the region, grape variety, or vintage. And this is oftentimes useful if you're going to be going to a themed tasting and you need to decide whether to purchase a bottle or whether you have something in your collection. You can quickly run a search and determine if you have something for that particular vintage, grape variety, or region. It also allows you to segregate your wine by storage location. So if you have some wine at home and some at your off-site storage facility, you can input those things into your management software and then see what you have at either location. And while Cellar Tracker is available on a website, I typically found that it's useful to use a mobile application rather than the website. However, I don't necessarily care for the Cellar Tracker mobile application. So what I found is that the Corks mobile application is actually more effective and more user-friendly. And so I generally use that. That does require a one-time payment of $2 up front, but I found that it's well worth it, and it's a lot more user-friendly. The good thing about Corks is even though it's not Cellar Tracker itself, it's fully compatible with Cellar Tracker. And so you get the same advantages in terms of being able to have access to those tasting notes and the extensive wine library that I discussed earlier. In my experience, the mobile application is better than the website because it's very helpful when you're on the go. If you're at your off-site facility enjoying some wine, for example, you can remove it from your inventory right after you consume the bottle, and that way you won't forget to do so when you get home later. Likewise, if you get presented with an offer to purchase wine by email and you need to make a quick decision, you can quickly check your inventory to see whether or not you already have that wine, and if so, how many bottles you may have. That way, even when you're on the go, you can get the information that you need to make a purchasing decision right at your fingertips. So what do you think about cellar management software? Do you find it effective? And if so, which cellar management software do you use? Please let me know in the comments below. Depending on the responses I get, I may either do a follow-up video or write an Instagram post about it in the future. Thanks so much. Until then, drink well.